This is Build Your Difference, a podcast created by Bleue artists, a brand platform with one goal: to help great visionaries like you build impressive brands. Every month, we'll bring you insightful tips, knowledge, and compelling stories from successful entrepreneurs and the Bleue artist team on how to create and market a winning brand that does more than just launch a new product or service. It starts an ongoing conversation. Because you're not just making a brand, you're making a difference. Let's start building.
Usually the way I do this is I thought it'd just be great to get started by having you tell us who you are, what you do, and just give us a little background on your book. I believe that was published, in December 2020?
Yes, it was. Boy, it just seems so long ago.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I am a storyteller. I've been a storyteller since I was about 7 years old. And if storytelling or lying is a mental illness, then I got that.
No.
Okay, because I've been making up stories ever since I was 7 years old.
Mm,
Maybe just my imagination has, this is really the truth. And I make up lyrics to songs. I have something that I see like a bug when I was younger, or a cow if I went to the country for my grandparents, or now my ancestors, or anything, the sun or the color blue. Um, I've been telling stories and making them up and lying when I was younger, and then I recognized the error of my ways, and so I just made up stories, and it was a protection mechanism for maybe some of the turmoil that I faced as a Black child in the city. I didn't have a hard life because my parents were both educators, but sometimes some of the places where we lived were hard life because at during those times it was harder for Black people to get jobs as teachers. So
mhm.
my father, who went on to be a principal and principal of the year and a not a superintendent of sorts, but a sort of a mentor to other teachers in Arlington, Virginia, um, had a hard road. Both of my parents were 90. My mom was deceased this year from COVID. We
Mm,
lost her in November 12th, exactly, from COVID 19. So she
mm.
made it to 90 years. So I had her for 90 years, and I actually made up a poem about that, how long we had her. So getting back to, I have a hard time focusing and I don't want to get off kilter. So I've
That's
been
okay.
telling stories, and I think I made up my first poem when I was 9 in vacation Bible school. And it was something as simple as all the kids go in line, and we are women, all the kids stand in line, we read our Bible all the time, or something simplistic like that. And so from then on, poems came to me, poems, stories. And I had my revolutionary side because my sister was a uh, derivative of a Black Panther. So
Mm,
I was very young when all that was going on.
right.
But she said she deemed me Malikia. So that was my African name. And so I knew all about the Black Panthers, Angela Davis at a very young age. And my poems were reflective of that. So I went on, and I got married, and I married a musician because I was very attracted to creative men,
Mm,
writers, poets, musicians, dancers. You know, the creativity was a part of my game because I'm also a musician. I play bass and keyboards, and I also dance. So I was always attracted to that creative man.
sure.
So I married a very gifted multi instrumentalist who manifested bipolar disorder after 5 years of our married life. Thus, my story
Mm,
in the first story, Naked in the Shadow of His Madness, because that's what I was. And that led me to write stories that pertain more to mental illness and mental wellness. And my poetry was sad, and I developed depression disorder, which I do have at this moment. So my poetry and my storytelling, sir, are a manifestation of my need to have a cathartic experience, if that makes any sense. So
absolutely.
I write to have
Hmm.
clarity and purity and to be cleansed out. I need a cleansing
Got it.
in my poetry.
Got it.
And I have synesthesia. Do you know what
I
that is?
heard. Yeah, I was watching the interview you had with Pierre,
So
the
you
open
know that
sessions.
when you sense
Right, right,
the
and
taste or
very,
smell or
yeah,
feel colors.
yes, it's very fascinating. And when I was listening to that conversation, and the two of you were discussing synesthesia, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
um,
I never
it
could say it as an adult either, but
uh,
synesthesia, yeah.
it kind of made me think of it's almost like a superpower,
Yes.
you know,
And that's what I
you
tell
know,
my middle schoolers. I tell my middle
yeah.
schoolers, your librarian has synesthesia. Do you know what that is? They said, no, Miss B, what is it? I say, well, I can hear colors. I can taste
Hmm.
them. I can smell yellow. So when I play the C note,
Hmm.
I see yellow. I hear yellow. When my mother used to call me in for, I told you that in the other interview, I'll be quick about this. When my melodic mother called me in, Sherry, come on in here. We got to eat. And I thought about all the luscious meals she prepared. I wasn't vegan
Hmm.
then, so I was eating
Hmm.
everything. And I would actually hear gold. I would hear
Wow.
the golden hue. I
Yeah.
would hear it and I would see it leading me into the luscious pathway of her food in the kitchen. Okay. So, but I just thought everybody had that superpower. But
No, no, no.
yeah,
I
I just
mean,
thought everybody. But it does, if you will,
mm,
color my writing.
okay.
So when I talk in some of my poems, I say, we're tasting diamonds as we sway in a dance on gypsy clouds, and we see rainbow colored notes in the sky, or something like that. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just talking now. So
Yeah.
that helps me. It helps me to write the way I write. It
Yeah.
really does.
Well, I I guess we should let our listeners know that your stage name is Blue La Poetess. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm
And I'm
sure
wondering
you're the first
where.
person to know about my change.
Ah,
But we'll talk about that in a minute.
I was just curious. How did you land on that particular stage name?
Well, I took French for a long time and I never
Hmm.
liked the pronunciation of bleu. So I just took the letters with not on my book, but now I took the spelling, the feminine spelling. Now I use Bleue,
Hmm.
which is la bleu. And I
Hmm.
always liked the color blue.
Hmm.
Blue has special meaning for me. Blue is serene, but blue can be sad. And I
Hmm.
have a poem called The Hues of the Blues. But I wrote that as a jazz piece, because we have
Hmm.
Midnight Blue, and that's might be a man that catches his significant other um, in the arms of another, and that's a midnight kind of blue. So, you see, and I'm kind of a little nutty, but but then I wanted to pick my company name, and I created my company, Blue Lotus Illumination, for my son who has autism savant. So
Hmm.
he's highly
Hmm.
gifted. He plays 8 instruments
Wow.
and he's also bipolar. So I wanted to find an African flower that was blue. So when I looked and looked and proceeded, we have the internet now, we have everything, and I've been to
Hmm.
Africa,
Hmm.
I've in Egypt, I came upon the blue lotus flower, which blooms other places, but it specifically blooms in robust nature in the Nile. And I thought it signified Black people and many
Hmm.
people who have struggles. But I feel like every morning, like clockwork with the sunrise, the blue lotus flower raises its beautiful pod and it
Hmm.
spreads its petals unto the sun. And every nighttime, like clockwork, it closes its beautiful petals and sinks back into the muck and the mud of the Nile that overflows, only to arise anew, unscathed, unsoiled, all of those things like Black people. We always have to
Yeah.
do that. We always have to go into the muck, and
Yeah.
many races do, and many
Yeah.
social economic groups. and then we raise above the muck, unscathed, unsullied,
Mm.
and we spread our wings and we, I mean, not our wings, our petals, and we bloom.
Right.
So that's why my fascination with the blue. And one
Okay.
other, I love
Mhm.
water. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to find blue water in DC. Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting. I love being near water, around it, but
me
I'm never been
too.
comfortable in it,
I'm
you
I'm
know?
comfortable in it, but I like being around it more. So
Yeah.
we're synonymous with that because I tell you why. Water. Can't you
Mm.
create near the water? You can have clarity near the water. You
Hmm.
can just think about possibilities near the water. All of that
Hmm.
is, and then you have the blue water, you have the blue sky. It's very hard, as I said, to find blue water in DC.
Hmm.
But you can go to Virginia Beach, you can go to the
Right.
Bay, Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, you can go to the ocean. So that's blue. That's why blue.
Yeah. And so your book is kind of a culmination of your experiences with your husband and your son and their struggles. Is that right?
Yes, it's a culmination of my husband, my son, because
Hmm.
my son's story is going to come out in book three. And
Okay.
his story, and I, all of my stories, if you will, have
Hmm.
madness encrypted in them. So the first story is naked in the shadows of his madness, and
Right.
that's because I was felt vulnerable,
Hmm.
and the abuse and the tragic love story of the nakedness of my abuse
Right.
um, was in the shadows of his shadow self. So thus my first poem talks about, can I dwell in the moon shadow of your shadow self?
Mm.
Because I felt like I had to ask permission to be a part of even his shadow.
Yeah.
So the next story is called Beautiful Madness because it dealt with a gentleman who was also mentally ill, but he was beautiful. He was just beautiful physically and intellectually and just everything, just
Yeah.
creatively. But he had bipolar disorder. He was a narcissist. Thus, that beauty was tragic. That's why I have a song called Tragically Beautiful. I should rock that too. And I should play that sometime on here. So on my phone. And and that's that story. But Cameron's story, my son,
Hmm.
he's going by Fifth Element now. That's his stage name, Fifth Element. He's had all kinds of names. So it's Fifth Element now. He's somewhere in the Fifth Element. And his story is called Genius of Musical Madness. So every story has a madness in there. So I got Naked in the Shadows. I got Beautiful Madness. In the next book coming up, I got Madness on Canvas. And that's a sad story of a gifted Black youth who went
Mm.
to HBCU, historically Black university. And in his senior year, he developed schizophrenia.
Mm.
So he was an astrophysicist major,
Mhm. Oh, wow.
astrophysics major, and he was
Yeah.
also an art major. So
Mm.
um, that, then we have, please don't give that madman the mic. And I spell his name like Mike, but he's a singer, and he had addiction, addiction, and drug
Mm.
addiction and depression. Then we have poetic madness, which is not me, believe it or not. It's a woman who was a poet, but she was on the streets of DC. On the streets of DC, and she wrote poems on the street. And she wrote poems on scraps and gave them out to people. Beautiful woman. And but she went to a homeless shelter and she got married and she has a baby and she's doing well. So in my next book called Salty Seductions, I'll be manifesting some of her poems.
Okay.
And I just want to get through it. And then the next story is Madness on Canvas. I told you about him. Then Cameron's story, my son, that is Genius of Musical Madness. And my
Mm.
story, sir, is Orchestrator of Madness.
Hmm.
Because I feel like I'm conducting. You go that way, if you want to
Yeah.
bring the troops in and bring the horns in
Yeah.
and bring it's a lot of traffic
Yeah.
in my head. So, and that's a poem too called Traffic in My Head. So that's the book. That's
Okay.
the manifestation of the book. But the book, like you asked me before,
Yeah.
is Kenya's ride, Kenya's journey
Okay.
through the madness.
Now, the topic of mental illness, I mean, that's a really heavy topic to take on. And also there's this personal experience in the struggle you're living with there with all that. What about those experiences led you to feel the need to write the book? Because a lot of people would say that it's just too much, because I would imagine you would have to really go deep and kind of face a lot of issues that some people would want to run away from. So
Well,
was
I
there
never
a,
person I ran away from. That's a great question. That's a great
you know,
question. Thank you for that.
sure.
I ran away from a lot of it. And
Mm,
in running away, I went inward, depression, thoughts of suicide.
mhm,
It's overwhelming with my husband, my ex-husband.
yeah.
And in the book, when people read it, they will see how I was always in a closet hiding. I always was manifesting. I love beignets. I don't know. Have you had
Oh,
beignets?
New,
Beignets,
New
beignets.
Orleans.
So I
Oh,
love beignets. But in my book, which is a little tattered right now because I've been doing some reads with people,
mm,
um, I have a part where I was getting beaten by him. He was hurting
mm,
me. And I said, I reached for rainbows, kaleidoscopic beignets that tasted and heard that I heard sugar sprinkling downward at diamonds into me. So I I escaped into my writing. I escaped into my world of beignets. I love beignets. And I escaped into now that's not very vegan, okay, because I'm vegan now, but that I wasn't vegan when I was married.
yeah.
And I escaped into rainbows. I escaped into colors, colors. Hide me, blue, hide me,
Mhm,
yellow. Can he see me? Can he see me? Am I hidden in the closet? Am I deep
mhm,
enough in my colors that he can't see me? So I did run away, but I tackled it, the mental illness, in prose and poetry. Because luckily for me, the editor of my book or the reviewer of my book on Amazon, my book is not doing very well, by the way. Maybe it can do better. Maybe it can do better in England. I had it right at the point where we were, oh no, it came out in 2019, actually, December.
okay.
And
Okay.
when I went to have my book, you know, have my book reviews, I mean, my book talks, the pandemic hit.
Mhm.
So I had to find a virtual way, and that has not been very successful. But that's
Well,
okay. I
it's
still
tough.
have time, and I'm
Yeah.
developing it into a screenplay now. So
Oh,
that might
excellent.
help. So anyway,
Yeah.
yes, your question. I can go off on a tangent. I'm sorry. Pull me in, bring me in.
Well, what I was asking is there was there a moment that had you feel that, I need to write this down, you
Yes,
know?
when I was actually hiding in the closet,
Okay.
I knew that
Well,
somewhere in the future I had to write about
yeah.
that.
Your mention about hiding in the closet reminds me when I was reading up about your book, I felt like I have found some passage from the book that I went back and tried to find later on. I could not find it, referencing about being in a closet with someone, the person on the outside with a gun.
Yes,
Does that
that's
sound
true.
familiar? And I remember reading that and read that passage, and I wish I could remember where I found it. Um,
I can find it for you.
and
Um,
my first reaction after reading that was, "Geez," you know.
I was sorry for all the
And
noise.
that's all right.
I'm in my townhouse and it's noisy. So I don't want to take up too much time, but it talks about I'm hiding in the closet, in
Hmm.
the darkness, away from all light, all reality. It is shrouded in shades of gray, cramped and somewhat damp in here. I think about spiders because that's something that I fear. But then
Hmm.
I talk about there are more threatening sounds. I didn't, aloft that I'd anticipated all before I entered this dark abode all of maybe 2 minutes ago. I'm not trying to read it, but then it gets into the expletives and bitch,
Yeah.
where are you? And then it's
Hmm.
difficult to hear inside the closet, but I thought I heard him cough. Now, when I have airplanes flying over here now. Come on. I literally have airplanes flying over here. This is insane. Okay. I thought I heard him cough.
Hmm.
cartridge on his bar semi-automatic rifle. It's amazing how razor sharp your other senses become when you are engulfed in darkness. This must be what blindness feels like, to have your senses helping you in a way that sighted people could never know. Then I go on to talk about the gun.
Yeah.
And I give the particulars of the gun and the collateral damage that a hollow tip bullet can have on my insides, which is what he always threatened me with. So that's the passage, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
The passage you're speaking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I go into earlier how we got to that closet.
Right.
You know, he was a gifted musician, and he was playing upstairs, and I was on the bed with a monitor on my belly because I had a troubled pregnancy, you know, and they used to monitor my baby's movement, and I had about 10 more minutes, and my husband was upstairs, and he was playing his piano or many instruments, and, you know, he said, he was talking about he got great deals today. He'd already lost his record contract with La Face. Okay, he'd already lost it because of his insanity. People are not very kind when you have mental illness. And so he was still talking about the deal like it was going on. So I got off the bed to turn off the machine, and I knocked over his 25-year-old bottle of cognac, Remy Martin. And just at that moment, he said, "Hey, Kenya, bring me that bottle of cognac that I put beside your bed, would you?" And of course, I'm not trying to take up all the time about the book.
Sure.
Everything stopped. I didn't know how long I sat there. I knew the piano was just still playing, so I had time for him not to come downstairs, time to hide my crime. So I took a throw blanket and I tried to hide it. Then I got some perfume to hide the aroma, and I heard the piano stop playing. And I looked at the door, and there he was. And then the chase was on, because I had done something unspeakable. I had spilled his 25-year-old bottle of Remy Martin, and I was going to die because of it.
Yeah.
So that's in the book. I don't know why people don't think my book is exciting, but that was a part of his mental.
Yeah. It's interesting. I knew a music producer who had a mental illness, and he was from Nigeria, and they don't look too kindly upon mental illness there, from what I've been told. And he came to the United States, and I played a show at a church one evening, and he approached me, very nice man. And of course, I had no clue at this time that he had any kind of mental illness.
I'm sorry, that's my son. I'm just going to.
That's all right.
No, I'll get rid of it.
If you need to take it, go on.
No.
Okay. And he approached me after performance, and very complimentary, and we would later go on to play a few shows at the church, and then he began to call me at my home, trying to develop these get-rich-quick schemes constantly. And the priest at the church who was facilitating these performances, I later found out from him that this producer suffered from, I believe it was some kind of schizophrenia, if I'm not mistaken. And he would often be at one of these shelter homes in the downtown area where we were living at the time. But a lot of times he would just be kind of walking the street. You would see him up and down the main street a lot of the times. And so, some of these shelters are kind of first come, first serve for a bed, let's say. So, he might have his own bed for a couple of nights. Then next week or something, he might just be on the streets. And I know you've said in your discussions before how the authorities treat especially Black men with mental illness. And I don't know what's happened with him, because it's been a couple of years or more since I've known about his situation. But the preacher at the church, he was always concerned that the police were going to catch him in a moment of his mental illness causing him to act out. Yes, and like you say, he's not going to go to a care facility. He's going to go to prison, right? And
that's what happens.
Yeah. So
that's what I say in one of my poems. You really did look at my book. So I say that in there. I said, in one of my poems, I say, um, the blue arm of the law or something often treats them like they're something. There's something I don't remember all my quotes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like they're
So,
thugs, you know,
mm,
because they feel that the result of their mental illness is akin to because they're addicts and they're hoodlums and they're on drugs. So it's not always that though. It might be because
yeah.
mentally ill people do self-medicate,
Hmm.
and so it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. And when my son acted out in Kingstown, which is a beautiful part of Virginia, where there's trees and there's nature and there's a lot of ways you can bike and you can run and you can look at the geese and you certainly can't swim in the water, but you don't have a lot of, but you can observe it and you can look at the
Hmm.
fish and things of that
Yeah.
nature that thrive in that water and butterflies and things. But one time he acted out and the neighbors called on him. I was at work. And when I got home, they had taken him into custody.
Mm.
And he ended up spending 2 months in jail. And I had to get him a public defender, which I now call public pretenders because they're still in bed with the prosecuting
Mhm.
attorneys. And then we had to pay. Thank God I have a family of some means.
Mm.
We had to pay money for what I called the gladiator, like the gladiators that were on Scandal. We had a team of two gladiators that got my son out of jail, and we were able to put him in a restorative setting where he thrived. And they had music therapy, they had art therapy, because music is his gift. Music. He plays, 8 instruments. Come on. And he's been playing the harmonica since he was 4.
Yeah.
So when that book comes out, I'll probably have another interview with you, hopefully. But yes, you're right. That is why I've taken
Okay.
on the mantra. That is my focus: is movement against the mass incarceration of the mentally ill. That is my mission.
Yeah.
So I write about it in my books, but I
I
make them
wanna,
fiction because it makes it palatable. Do you understand?
sure, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask or bring up something about that, but before I forget, I wanted to make sure I asked you about um, your writing process with the book. How did
Ooh.
you approach it? Because I know some people are scattershot. They'll get inspired and write a bit, and they won't write for 2 weeks, and will get inspired on a completely unrelated topic to the chapter they've been working on. Or some people just sort of sit down and I'm going to finish chapter one before I move on to chapter two.
I'm that person.
You finish the
Okay.
chapter by chapter.
Yeah, because let me say something to you. Mosaic of Madness had a different cover.
Mm,
Mosaic of Madness is 7 stories. But because of the way I write, which is
yeah.
so broad, this is a short book. This one story could have been a book. Naked in the Shadow of His Madness.
Hmm.
My entire book, Pierre knows, was
Hmm.
780 pages. That's
Oof.
not palatable to most people.
Yeah.
Read 7 stories
Yeah.
about 7 creative, mentally ill Black people.
Hmm.
Okay, so my book was an outline because I'm a
Hmm.
teacher. So I teach
Mm.
writing and poetry, and I'm also a librarian. So I
Hmm.
know how books are, manifested, and I know the
Right.
process. Yes, I get inspired, but I still had
Hmm.
the outline.
Sure.
I had the outline, the beginning. I wanted it to be gripping. So I started from the middle, or I started from the end, where I was in the
Mm.
closet getting ready to die. I
Hmm.
started from the end, and I
Hmm.
moved backwards, if you will. So I'm in
Right.
and out of the closet. I'm in and out of the closet.
Hmm.
I am to when he was a boy, and I talk about the atrocious treatment of his father and breaking his instruments as a child when that was his solace. I talk about a lot about sex and how, because a lot of mentally ill people are hypersexual,
Hmm.
so that is some way they feel like they can cleanse or extinguish or whatever,
Right.
light their emotions. They can cleanse with orgasmic delight. I'm so sorry if
Hmm.
this is for children,
Oh, no, no, not at
but
all.
I mean, I'm just being real. So a lot of times in the book, you will see that my husband felt that he could lose his madness in my body. That's
Hmm.
And he was really insatiable,
Yeah.
insatiable. And but I was the vessel. I thought he could cleanse and lose his man is so. No, I'm an outline type of guy. So
Mhm.
in my book, as you see the table of contents, I you can't see it. I wrote it that way. I wrote you can't see it.
It's kind of flickering in and out of the
Yeah,
backdrop
I
there.
wrote it.
Yeah, that's better. Well, it kind of comes in and out.
I wrote
Yeah,
it.
you can get a sense there. Yeah. Mhm.
So I outlined each story, and I just ended up publishing two of them. They were cut down because
Yeah.
I'm long-winded. But yes, my writing process for a book is very methodical. Now the ideas as they come in,
Mhm.
they're amusing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, even with poems, like being on here now with you, um, this will be a poem later
Hmm.
that I will say something to the extent it won't be a rhyming poem. It'll be a blank verse poem. Um, he let me verse my thoughts. They didn't rhyme, but I was able to cleanse cathartically in my own time. Now that does rhyme,
That,
but,
yeah.
but I didn't mean to rhyme. Okay, now I better write that down. No, but, but no, but I'll have a poem about the process.
Hmm.
This I'm always fearful when I interview because of the fact that I know that I have depression and I know that I have synesthesia and sometimes I have a hard time focusing, but I don't want to appear to be a mad woman, even though I have a poem entitled "To Be a Mad Woman."
Well, I'm sure people will disagree with me, but I think to some extent we all have a level of depression within us.
I think so.
Some of us just have are better at masking it.
Yeah, thank you for that. What you said
Sure.
about
Yeah.
we all have a level of depression. We all hear voices. Now,
Hmm.
our control of the voices and how we gear them towards our focus event is a different thing. But like in
Hmm.
my son's case, he has schizophrenic features. So he woke up one morning and he said, "Mom, is the television on?" I said, "No, Cameron." Well, I keep hearing, "Where's the radio on in here?" I said, "There's no radio on. I hear voices. I hear voices in my head. Why won't the radio shut off?" That was the beginning of his schizophrenia. He couldn't shut the voices off. He couldn't channel them. But I can channel my voices because I get them all the time. At the strangest times, I get a voice that says, "Kenya needs to go this way. Why are you making her a non-sexual being?
Hmm.
You had a lot of sex when you were married to your husband because he tried to cleanse himself. Own your truth." I'll hear that voice telling me to change. Yeah, you feeling what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you, in writing this book, did you find it difficult to be true to yourself in telling these stories? Very, very deep, controversial. Not that's not the right word. Um,
Yeah, it's controversial. You're right.
well, yeah, in a way, I guess I
I'm a
was
middle
trying
school librarian.
to. You know, they're
Us
very
adults don't
personal,
know.
very,
Us
very
as parents
complex.
don't know that I have
Yeah,
other side. They all know I'm a mental health, but it was difficult.
yeah. Because I'd imagine it could be easy to, especially those darker moments, to not want to have to really face them, or it can be uncomfortable even for the person who's experienced them, that you might want to tweak your story to avoid that.
You're right.
Did you run into that problem at all?
I did. You're so perceptive. It was hard
Hmm.
to speak my truths. It was hard to dive in deep, dive in the waters real deep,
Yeah.
goddess of the water, yimmy ya. You got to dive in. That's what I call it. So I had to dive. That's my picture.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had to dive in to
Mm,
the experiences, and I cried a lot
yeah.
as I was writing them. I reminisced about the beating. I reminisced about possibly thinking in that closet at the very end when I say I am walking on a tightrope.
Mm.
I got to read that part now. Let me do it real quick. I felt pain, then nothingness, then blackness because I thought he shot me. I felt wetness. What was the color? Was it red? I couldn't tell in the darkness of the closet. I sank into a strangled abyss that I was on a tightrope balancing on my toes. There are different kinds of tightropes. So, you know, I had to research tightropes, right? There is the slack wire. So I go into that. And there is the high wire, which is the same as the wire, but a much greater height. Walking on a, you know, I talk about walking, having a net. So I didn't have a net. And so there was no safety net on either side. On one side, there was madness, pain, torture, and mental and spiritual abuse. On the other side, simplistic death. Which should I choose? So
Mm.
that was
Yeah.
painful because I wrestled with that many times with my son in my womb.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
thought about taking my life, but what would I be committing? It wouldn't just be suicide, it would be matricide. That's the right term. I would be killing the mother of me. I would be killing the life in me. Even though a doctor told me there's a 50% chance that your son might have a mental illness.
Mm.
So I'll take that chance with my son.
When I was in school, we had, it was one of these private um, kind of,
I'm sorry, I'm not going to
sure.
click off my thing.
Okay. It was one of those private, like an Episcopal school. And so we would have these services once a week. And I remember the minister's one of his sermons that has stuck with me had to do with suicide. He served in the military, and a lot of persons who serve come back with issues um, that often lead to suicide.
Right.
Well, he described suicide as uh, a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and that line has always stayed with me. You know,
Right.
because I have this kind of belief that nothing lasts forever, both the good and the bad,
That
and
too.
things will change. They might change tomorrow, they might change in 500 years, but they will change. And that is true. There are certain actions that we can take that can have both good and bad repercussions. And you know, with something like taking one's life, there's no do-overs, you know. And so that's why he
You and I have synergy here because sorry about these ads popping up on my silly computer.
that's okay.
I mean, so I'm trying to ignore them, but they just keep popping up.
Mm,
So you said a lot. I
mm,
wanted to unwrap that. So you said that you had the belief, and many before that you said things, and I have this COVID brain now because back in October I had COVID pneumonia. So there is a
oh,
cold that's
goodness.
associated with
Yeah.
it. So you did say that you have a belief that anything can change and it can get.
Mm-hmm.
I have that belief. That's why I
Yeah.
fight. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
fight for the mentally ill. That is what I fight for. I have hope. And you
Mm-hmm.
also said, it was something you just said that, oh God, what was it? This is terrible that I have this kind of like COVID dementia or Alzheimer's, I call it. Um, you said that you believe that things would get better. And then you said something very poignant that I really agree with. Oh, can you recap it for me? I wish you would.
Uh,
You said that, and I don't
well,
know.
that, you know, nothing stays the same.
Yeah.
Things change tomorrow. They could change 500 years from
Okay.
now.
That's what you said.
Yep.
You said things can change tomorrow. I'm so glad that you have the memory. Um, I have to believe that the mental illness world will change. That it
Mm-hmm.
will be more like it is in Broward County, Florida, where the police are shaking hands with the mental illness facilities
Mm-hmm.
and not calling 911 for the police to come out and
Yeah.
handcuff and put them down on the ground and take them to jail where they get no meds and they really have no beds and they have no type of sympathy. I have to believe that. I have to believe there'll be more places to benchmark. I have to believe, like in Denmark, in
Mhm.
Norway, because I researched this stuff, where they have awesome mental health kind of
Yeah.
working entities. Because I think I want to go there and benchmark. I've traveled a lot in my day because I,
Mm.
I was a librarian at School Without Walls, which is literally a school without walls. But in this,
Yeah.
we have walls, but we travel the world for educational purposes.
Mhm.
But I've been to Africa, I've been to Europe, I've been to South America. The one place I wanted to go, and I haven't been able to go, was Australia. And because Australia
Mm.
has a pretty good mental health system. So I have to believe, like we're
Mhm.
saying, that it's going to get better. I have to believe my
Yeah.
son's mental illness merged with his gift will heal. If
Mhm.
I don't believe that, then I don't have any hopes. I have no dreams. And I have to
Yeah.
believe one day, sir, that my book will be a screenplay. That my book, Mosaic of Madness, will be a screenplay on a streaming platform
Mm.
that will flourish. I have to believe that I will speak in front of thousands of people about my poetry and my mental capacity for beliefs
Mhm.
in mental wellness and hope. And
Yeah.
I already did speak in front of a big audience, by the way. Back in November, after my beloved mother died, I was commissioned by UNESCO
Mm.
to write a poem about the future of poetry in the Afrocentric world of AI, of
Wow.
artificial
Yeah.
intelligence.
Yeah.
So I wrote a poem um, about that. I want to share a verse with you because it's
Sure.
what I feel innately. I really thought to myself that, you know, poetry for Black people, and Black people, I'm not just saying only we have religion, but, the soul and religion is a big part of our world. So I can't find the poem, but it is a verse that says, oh, here's the poem. Well, I tell you, I'm really mixed up. So I have a verse in here where I say, this is very important to me. Um, Artificial intelligence can replicate the parts of us, our physical, mental, possibly emotional, to create the human that is deemed whole. But it's not probable, nor is it even possible to replicate our soul. So
I was mentally going there with you while you were reading that.
I think you feel me on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Artificial intelligence can do a lot of things. We can get the voices. We can,
It can replicate very well the shell of a person,
absolutely.
not the energy that's inside. When someone passes, it's really weird. You can feel their energy has left the room. You know, they say when someone passes, if they're in a room with an open window, that their soul can escape that room out the window, and you can feel the difference when they're gone.
Yes. So I have a hip hop side that you need to know about.
Okay.
Even with my mystical poetry, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very much into hip hop and
Mm-hmm.
of all realms, of all ethnicities. You have some absolutely dope hip hop artists in London and in England.
Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely, just some incredible poets there. So I'm going to read this part of the poem that is hip hopish. I know we're straying away. So this is where I'm telling them about what's going to happen with Black people in an artificial intelligent world, in this futuristic world. Participation in the creation of the prophesized, overemphasized evolution of a revolution that will not be televised because it's in a digital cloud. Embedded in the brain of a people and stamped on the souls is the mantra, I'm Black and I'm proud. So that's my hip hop side that kind of goes on in the poem.
Yeah.
So you can, I know you can feel that with me that, we're
Definitely.
trying to do the evolution of the revolution, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm talking about the revolution will not be televised because it's going to be in a digital cloud. This is in the future. So that was what I was saying to them. So anyway, That's the
Well,
poem. It's a long poem. It's a three-page poem that I did for UNESCO
oh, wow.
for
Wow.
a conference.
Yeah. Impressive.
Oh, my son is calling again, but I can't hear. Okay, so um,
I,
do you have
so,
any more questions? I know I've gone off the marker a little bit.
well, I was curious how, you know, the book's released, I think we clarified December 2019. And in that time, what sort of response have you gotten from any family and friends who've read it? Because it's a very personal book. And, you know,
My
I mean,
brother,
I imagine it's run the gamut of support to how could you put, you know, your dirty laundry out there for the whole world,
well,
you know?
my brother and sister. My
Mm-hmm.
sister is very. She's a minister, a pastor, so she's supportive. She's
Mm-hmm.
supportive. But my brother, who is a strong black man who doesn't like the airing of dirty laundry,
Mm-hmm.
he thought that I demonized the men in my book. He has never read it. He said, I don't want to read any demonization of black males. I said, but my 90-year-old mother, who was 89 at the time, said, she doesn't demonize them. She uplifts them. She tells of tragic love stories in which societal oppression, coupled with maybe self hate that they're taught, maybe some hard knocks in life from family members and friends, and being the second story was about a very beautiful, gifted rapper who was in the Air Force, and that was not a good thing for a black man. you know, the Air Force is a little different.
Yeah.
He was very brilliant in math, and that was doubted, and I don't know, just a lot of things. So he came back from the war absolutely battered
Mm-hmm.
and PTSD down, and you know more narcissistic than ever, and that was a hiding place for him.
Yeah.
The narcissism was hiding. He was hiding in his beauty, and he was tragically beautiful. That's the poem in the book, and that's my song that I should play for you before we go off. But anyway, so yeah, I've gotten mixed reviews.
Okay.
Friends have
It's,
been
yeah.
hostile. My ex-husband is not happy, but I don't mention his name. Everybody
Sure.
knows it's him because of the
Right.
sax.
Right.
And but I talked about our journey. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
guy that I wrote the story about in Beautiful Madness, he's happy about the book. He's now in prison due to his madness. He was proud of the writing of the book.
Okay.
And that's the difference in
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But it is a very personal account.
Mm-hmm.
And as I move further into my stories, they're very personal.
Right.
I have a poetry book coming out. I don't know if you're going to want to review that. It's called Salty Seductions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of women I've interviewed, and I wrote the poems of their
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Right.
But I'm a middle school librarian. So I will publish it under a pseudonym, and it has five themes for blackness. The first one is Black Fire. All of those poems will be about black men. The next one is Black Flower. That will all be about the struggles with black women. The next one is Black Gasm. I think I don't have to tell you what that's about. Black, okay. and,
Got it.
uh, and they're
Right.
not real sordid or anything. They're not
Sure.
real. I don't get into
Yeah. Yeah.
genitalia. It's just,
Right. Right.
you know what I'm saying? I allude to. I
Mm-hmm.
allude to the folds of the skin and the sweetness of her
Yeah.
melanin breasts or something. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so
Right.
I know I sound crazy. The next one, Black Storms, because everybody has storms.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the adversity of it all, there's Black Bliss. That's marriage and family
Yeah.
and traditions and picnics and music and all of that. So, but infused in all of that is some salty seduction stuff.
Mm.
Okay. So that book will be coming out in the summer.
Okay.
And
Um,
maybe you'll call me
so
back in for that book.
maybe so, maybe so. Your current book, where can your potential readers find it? Is it on Amazon? Is it through your personal site? How can they get a copy of the book?
They can get a copy of the book from my personal website, which is Blue Lotus
Mhm.
Illumination.com. I think you might have to put the www part there. I don't know.
Right.
I don't put it in there, but www.bluelotusillumination.com
Okay.
all together. They can also get the book on Amazon.
Mhm.
Just put in Blue Lotus just put in Mosaic of Madness. There's several books with that title, but they don't look like this.
Okay.
And it's by Blue La Poetess. So
Mhm.
you will know it's my book.
Right.
You can get it on Kindle, or you can get it on the special edition is in color. And let me talk a little bit about that as we're ending. There's a black and white version in
Mhm.
which the pictures, 'cause I'm a woman of pictures. So
Right.
in the book, each story was precipitated by a drawing. You can't see this drawing, but in the special edition, oh God.
Yeah, I can see some of it. It kind of flickers in and out. Yeah.
Okay, so you can see
Yeah, I
that?
see that.
So,
Yep.
so in the special edition, this picture is purple
Okay.
and the font is purple because that is how I saw my ex-husband's madness in purple.
Hmm.
Remember, I have synesthesia.
Right, right.
So in the second story in the book, each story has a color. Beautiful madness. This is a man stooping with dreads,
Mm-hmm.
kneeling. I know it's flickering in and out.
Yep, yep.
That's in red.
Okay.
The font is in red. So if you're a person that likes color and
Mm-hmm.
a little crazy synesthesia poet, the story is in red font. The
It's
drawings are in red
it's
for the
interesting
sake.
because I once had this idea to write a book where I think, and this is years ago, like maybe it was like a murder story. I can't remember, but that in on the page where a character is shot, you're reading the text and it's just like the black ink on white, as typical. But in the moment where the character's shot, suddenly the text starts to take on the red color, like to
Okay.
rep, and it's like at different points on the page, that color red is, so the text is highlighted in that color red. So it almost kind of creates this sense of blood trickling down the page. You
Hmm.
know,
Yes,
something like
I,
that.
I like that. Oh,
Never got it done, never went on to do it, but I had that idea in
why
my
can't we do
head.
that? Why as writers can't we do that? Because if you think about it, it's what we see.
Mm-hmm.
It is really what we see. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I think that I don't know. I'm trying to find my song so I can play it as we go out. Um, it's on iTunes, um, but I don't know why we can't do that. And I attempted to make my book a work of art.
Mm.
I hired a artist who got what I wanted. I walked him through the drawings of the creatures of the day, the naked in the shadow of his madness. I walked him through that and what I wanted and the colors. So he made naked in the shadow of his madness a
Mm-hmm.
picture of a woman ensconced in a closet. You can't see.
Yeah.
She's in a
Okay.
closet
Mm-hmm.
and that's her in the front,
Yeah.
folded arms. And in the shadows, you see a male. I don't know if you can
Right.
see that.
Yeah, I
And
can
then
see he's
another
in the
picture
doorway. Yeah.
is a man kneeling, hiding his beautiful face.
Yeah.
It's called Beautiful Madness. And he has dreads and his body is beautiful. You can see the sculpture nature of it, but he's tragically beautiful.
Yeah.
So I can't find my song. I know this. They can also find my book uh, on Barnes and Nobles online.
Okay.
Uh,
While you're trying to find the song, for a moment of, I guess, shameless promotion here, if you could tell us maybe how has your experience with Blue Artists and the publication with the book and all that, how's that been for you?
oh, it's been wonderful. Well, they were the culmination of dreams of a woman who is now years old. So all my life, that's the way I do it. All my life, I wanted to be an author.
Yeah.
So Blue Artist,
Mm.
Grandex, has made my dream come true. I told Pierre that. I said, you, you were the cultivator, the initiator, the magician that made all of this crazy woman with all of her words and her melodies and her thoughts come into a
Mm.
book. This would not have been possible without
Yeah.
Grandex, Blue Artist, however you want to name it, and the team.
Mm-hmm.
I was very sick near the end of the writing of this book. I think I had COVID
Yeah.
because they say that COVID came early. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had spent 3 days in the ER with my son trying to get a
Goodness.
cycle,
Yeah.
and everybody was coming in. People were coughing, they were dying, they couldn't breathe, they were vomiting. So I got a terrible upper respiratory disease. I could not breathe, I couldn't hardly talk, but Blue Artists took their time with me and got me through the editing process. I was very picky. No, that's a
Right.
colloquialism. Please don't stop what you're doing, child. Chile. And
Mm.
the editor might have put child. I said, no, it's child.
Yeah.
Chile. It's a black thing. It's a black thing.
Right.
You
Right.
know, like this is a busty, overly made up woman sweating, but listening to this sax player and saying, please don't let that man do what he's doing, child. And
Mm.
so
Yeah.
we went through that. We went through edits. They worked with me. They worked with me. And we got the book out.
Excellent.
They are amazing. They are
Yeah.
amazing. My
Yeah.
website, everything, the book publishing. They're publishing my next book in this series, my next two books that are coming out,
Mm-hmm.
Mosaic and Madness. And they're going to have different cover because all the colors are different. This
Oh, I
cover
see.
is
Okay.
purple and red. The
Yeah.
next cover will be more earthy colors. But
Okay.
they're amazing. They work with you. Their prices are very reasonable, if I may say so. You have an idea, they help you. They help you. I'm a writer, so I didn't need anybody to write my stuff. Okay. But I did need editing
Mm-hmm.
because I go off on a tangent. Okay,
Right.
let's focus
Yeah.
back. I find that they're, to me, one of the best multifaceted branding companies. And I did my research. I am a librarian. Hello.
Yeah.
So I researched branding companies and I could not leave them. I could
Mm.
not leave them. They would say, oh, there's this one in Atlanta. Oh, there's this one in
Right.
Spain. Oh, there's one in Africa. Oh, Sherry, you're Afrocentric. I said, I am sticking with. I will do a commercial for Blue Artist and Brandex. He did not pay me to say this, people. No, I think that they're good at everything that they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they will get me back on track because sometimes I'm crazy. They'll say, we're focusing on this. We're focusing on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they're
Yeah.
excellent.
Excellent. I'm so glad
I
it
just
worked.
wanted
It
to
worked
leave
out.
interviewing with you. You made me feel comfortable.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, this has been great. I mean, I know this topic and all this, we could talk about these things for hours on end. My family works in psychology and in counseling, so we're talking about these issues all the time. We could just go on forever, but I think we're at the time we need to kind of wrap up here. So,
It is, but we don't have enough books in fiction. Let me say
mm,
that. There's a lot
yeah,
of memoirs, and
yeah,
students can read about them if they're psychology students. But sometimes, now and
hmm,
again, people want to read about their experiences, and they can say, "Well, this is a fiction, but this is my story."
yeah,
Oh, this is beautifully done, but this is my story. There's poetry about my madness. There's poetry about my experience. So I think that there needs to
yeah.
be more.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, Blue, thank you so much for talking with me. It's been really great. And I hope the book has all kinds of success. Hope the screenplay happens for you. And, we'll probably speak again in the near future.
I hope that we will. And thank you so much for having me. And we finally connected. And that's what happened.
Yes, yes, 3 times a charm.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
Hi
you.
to
Thank you. Same to you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Difference. If you'd like to learn more about how Bleue Artists can help you develop a distinguished brand that inspires and engages a growing audience, then please visit us at www.blue-artist.com and be sure and subscribe to our monthly podcast for the latest tips and trends in brand development and marketing. And remember, you're not just making a brand, you're making a difference. Start building yours today.